Thank you so much, Brandon, for the kind introduction. I want to thank Mayor Peterson, Mayor Hogshead, and Superintendent Johnson for their leadership on behalf of the students, families, and educators in this city. I want to start our conversation tonight by talking about what school can be for all of our children. For me, if not for the teachers I had as a kid growing up in New York City, I wouldn't be standing here today. I wouldn't be alive today. I grew up in Brooklyn. Both my parents were career New York City public school educators. When I was 8 in October of 4th grade, my mom passed away. And I lived after my mom passed away with my father, who was sick with undiagnosed Alzheimer's. And then he passed away when I was 12. And during that period, from when I was 8 to when I was 12, home was this place that was scary and unpredictable. It was unstable. I didn't know what my father would be like from one night to the next. As he got more and more sick, I had to take on more and more responsibility at home, figuring out how to do the laundry, pay the bills, get food in our house. And the thing that saved me, the reason I'm standing here today, is that I was blessed to have a series of phenomenal New York City public school teachers. Teachers who made school a place that was safe, that was engaging, that was compelling, that was nurturing. I had a teacher who was my teacher in 4th, 5th, 6th grade, Mr. Osterweil. And his classroom was a place where I could be a kid when I couldn't be a kid outside of school. I remember the things we did in his class like it was yesterday. We did productions of Alice in Wonderland. We did productions of Midsummer Night's Dream, Shakespeare in elementary school. In Alice in Wonderland, I was the rose with big red felt petals sticking out of my head. We read the New York Times every day in his class, 4th, 5th, 6th grade. He was the kind of teacher, when you finished a book, he was there with the next. When you finished a math problem, he was there with another that was a little more challenging. And his classroom became this safe haven for me. And as my father got more and more sick, his classroom took on a more and more important role in my life. And even after my father passed and I moved around between different family members and different schools, it was always teachers who made school a place where I could have a sense of hope, more hope than I could have in my life outside of school. So I became a teacher and a principal because I wanted to try to do for other kids what teachers had done for me. I founded a school in Boston, a new school called Roxbury Prep, because of a deep belief that all schools should support their students in doing their best and giving back to their community, that all schools need to communicate to every child his or her unlimited potential. We built a school that was founded on the idea that a rigorous curriculum combined with robust supports for students' academic, social, and physical well-being, and a commitment to exposing students to life's possibilities could prepare every student for college and career success. I'm proud that Roxbury Prep became the highest performing urban middle school in the state of Massachusetts, that our students went on to graduate from college at 5 times the rate of demographically similar schools. But mostly I'm proud that we tried to create a school community that would give our students the nurturing and love and care and concern that schools gave to me. So what does it take to do this at scale? What should we try to ensure is true of every school? Well, one, we have to make sure that every student has access to a rich, well-rounded, and well-resourced education. A well-rounded education begins with high-quality early childhood experiences from 0 to 4. That's right, including high-quality pre-K, not just for 4-year-olds, but 3-year-olds as well. A well-rounded education means a K through 12 experience that isn't just about English and math, but also science and social studies and the arts, and the opportunities to learn world languages. I see we have an arts fan there, that's right. A well-rounded education means students have access to advanced coursework. Think about the reality that we know from the Civil Rights Data Collection survey, that low-income students and students of color are disproportionately likely to attend schools where you can't even take chemistry or physics or algebra 2, not to mention AP or international baccalaureate courses. All students should have access to advanced coursework. All students should have access to robust socio-emotional supports, opportunities to become critical thinkers and problem solvers. All students deserve resources to support their education. We did a study at the Education Trust that showed nationally in the school districts that serve the most affluent students, we're spending $1,000 more than in the school districts that serve the highest need students. And in some states, those disparities are even larger, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 disparities between neighboring districts. We also showed in that study that the disparities are actually larger for students of color. That is, in districts that serve large numbers of students of color, they're spending on average $1,800 less than districts that serve very few students of color. Resources matter. Consider that in a state like California, the ratio of school counselors to students is 1 counselor for every 650 students. Right? Resources have real consequences. A well-rounded education also means students will have access to well-prepared, well-trained, well-supported, effective teachers and principals. It means that students will have access to high-quality curricula in the classroom and high-quality enrichment programs after school and in the summer. We can deliver that to all of our kids. We know as a country we do a good job delivering all of those things to our most affluent students. But the test of our commitment to principles of equality and democracy is, are we providing those things to all of our students? Indeed, Indianapolis is showing that through innovation, it is possible to expand the number of students who have access to quality education. You should be very proud that in Indianapolis charter, students are getting the equivalent of 77 more learning days in reading and 100 more learning days in math. You should be proud that in the Indianapolis Innovation Network schools, students are getting another 53 days of learning in reading and 89 days of additional learning in math. But you also shouldn't be satisfied. As much as this night is about celebrating the progress that has been made in Indianapolis through an incredible collaborative effort by philanthropy and business and educators and families and a series of mayors deeply committed to education, this night also must be about the commitment to do more and to do it faster. Incremental progress is not sufficient. Our aspiration has to be to get to a place where every child graduates from high school prepared for college and career success and ready to engage as citizens. So in addition to that well-rounded education, we also have to make sure that all students have access to a classroom and school environment that is safe and supportive. And we know too often, that's right, we know too often our students who are most vulnerable do not get that. We know, for example, that African American students make up 18% of the students in pre-K in the United States and 48% of the students who are suspended from pre-K. 4-year-olds who are sent home from school told school is not for you. Consider that we would never do that in math. We would never say, oh, you struggled on this math quiz. No more math for you. But we do say that about the socio-emotional environment. You're struggling with the socio-emotional environment. No more interaction with peers for you. We know that African American students are more than 3 times as likely to be suspended from school as white students. In many communities, it's 4 times, 5 times, and it's not just boys, it's girls as well. Girls of color suspended 5 times, 6 times, 7 times the rate of white female students. We can do better. We have 19 states that still allow corporal punishment. That is, in 19 states today, there were students who were hit with a wooden object by a teacher in an act of state-sanctioned violence. We can do better. We know that there are 1.6 million kids who go to a school where there is a sworn law enforcement officer and no school counselor. We can do better. We should not be feeding students, that's right, we should not be feeding students into the school to prison pipeline. We should be, that's right, we should be feeding students into a pipeline from high-quality early childhood education to exceptionally strong K through 12 schools into post-secondary success. That is our moral obligation. And when students get off track, we should give them a second chance. I'm also only standing here today because there were educators and mentors who chose to give me a second chance. As I described, I experienced a lot of trauma as a kid, and like many young people that many of us in this room work with, having experienced trauma, I was angry as a teenager. Angry at my parents, irrational though that may have been, angry at adults, angry at the world. And I got in trouble, a lot of trouble. And I actually got kicked out of high school. I'm the first US Secretary of Education to have ever been kicked out of high school. And it would have been very easy for folks to look at me and say, here's an African-American, Latino male, family in crisis, going to New York City public school. What chance does he have? It would have been very easy to say, here's a young person who's been kicked out of high school, doesn't care about authority. What chance does he have? Folks could have given up on me. But I was blessed that people saw me as more than the sum of my mistakes. And so supportive socio-emotional environments are environments that give students real second chances. Third, we have to make sure that we prioritize diversity for all of our children. We gather more than 60 years after Brown versus Board of Education and have to acknowledge the reality that in many communities in the United States, schools are more segregated by race and by class today than they were 10 years ago. And once we acknowledge that reality, we have an obligation to do something about it. We have an obligation to create schools that are diverse by design, schools that create opportunities for students to get the academic benefit and the social benefit of interacting with others who are different from them. We also have an obligation to ensure that our teachers and school leaders are diverse. Consider that a majority of the nation's public school students are students of color, but only 18% of our teachers are teachers of color. Only 2% of our teachers are African American men. We can do better. We must do better. A recent study that was done by Johns Hopkins, among others, showed the very large data set that kids of color, African American students in particular, had an opportunity to have at least one African American teacher in elementary school were more likely to graduate from high school and more likely to go on to college. It matters for kids to see themselves represented in their school faculty. But I'll also tell you it matters for white kids too. It's important for white kids to see teachers and leaders of color in their schools and communities. And I have a friend who says that it's a little bit harder to be racist if you've had a black teacher for calculus. A little bit harder, not impossible, but a little bit harder. And it matters. It matters for kids to see diverse adults who care for them and believe in them. That is work that we must undertake together. Fourth, all schools need to see their mission not just as getting students across the high school graduation stage, but as ensuring their success in post-secondary opportunities. The reality is there are not that many jobs in the 21st century economy available to those with just a high school diploma. The best path to the middle class remains a college degree. But it is a prerequisite for success in our 21st century economy to have a post-secondary credential of some kind. You need either that 4-year bachelor's degree or a 2-year associate's degree or a meaningful career credential tied to a career of the 21st century. And we have to see our mission in K-12 as preparing students to succeed in those opportunities. This is a place where charter schools and innovation network schools could be real leaders in figuring out how we make sure that students are matched to the right post-secondary opportunities, making sure that we keep track of data on their experiences there to inform our work in K-12, and making sure that we continue to support students to success once they get there. We have to see the goal as not just getting to college, but through college with a meaningful degree. But now I can't leave us at those qualities of great schools. In a gathering of folks who care about innovation, it is critical that we talk about the importance of accountability and collaboration. There are so many charters here in Indianapolis and in Indiana and across the country that are doing all of the things that I've described, are providing that well-rounded education, are providing that strong socio-emotional set of supports, are creating diverse experiences for students, are recruiting diverse faculty, are helping students succeed in post-secondary admissions and once they get to those post-secondary opportunities. But we all know that there are also charter schools that are not doing that there are charter schools that are undermining the foundational charter covenant of greater flexibility in exchange for greater accountability. We have to acknowledge that there are states like Michigan, where the charter authorizing policies and state law on charters has resulted in a proliferation of low-performing, low-quality charters. We have to acknowledge that charters are not uniformly excelling, and we can do something about that. What we can do is ensure that charter authorizing is high quality, that we hold all charters to the covenant of greater autonomy in exchange for greater accountability. If we do that, we know what's possible. I think about a state like Massachusetts that has a very strong charter law, high bar to entry, rigorous oversight of schools' academic performance and operational performance, and a willingness to close low performers. And as a result, Massachusetts has one of the strongest charter sectors in the country. Indiana's commitment and the Mind Trust commitment to strong charter authorizing and strong charter accountability is essential to making the case for school innovation. And it's critically important that we continue that tradition of strong oversight. It's also critically important, that we can applaud that. That's right, strong oversight. It's also critically important that we do a better job as a country ensuring that best practices, whether they are in charter schools or district schools or innovation schools, are thoroughly shared. And one of the great things that the Mind Trust is doing, from the School Innovation Fellows Initiative to structured opportunities for people to share across sectors, one of the great things Mind Trust is doing is helping people learn what works. This is not about folks in charters or district schools telling somebody else how to do it. It's about learning together what is best for students, what is working best for students. There are great examples around the country. I think about the work that Uncommon Schools, the Uncommon Schools Network, is doing with New York City Public Schools, working teachers across charter and district to share instructional practices. I think about the work the KIPP Network is doing with San Antonio Public Schools to share strategies for helping kids get into strong post-secondary placements and get the support they need once they arrive. And we need to grow that work of cross-sector collaboration and sharing. We have to demonstrate that charters and the Innovation Network really are about not only creating great opportunities for the set of kids lucky enough to go to those schools, but about expanding opportunity for every kid in Indianapolis and Indiana and across the country. Finally, let me close with two final thoughts. One is I had the opportunity just about a week ago to be on a panel with a woman named China Tyler, who's a state representative from Roxbury, where my school, Roxbury Prep, was. And the fun thing about doing that panel with China, a panel focused on improving educational outcomes, is that China was one of my sixth graders at Roxbury Prep. In fact, when she first got elected to the State House, I was Secretary of Education. I called to congratulate her and told her if she wanted to visit the White House, I could arrange that. And she said, I'd love to visit the White House. I said, no problem. I'm happy to do that. I'll make sure that you and your mom are able to visit together. And she said, well, actually, I was thinking about bringing my chief of staff. And I realized, right, because you're not in sixth grade anymore, and you don't go everywhere with your mom as you did in sixth grade. But China on that panel shared that the year before she came to Roxbury Prep, her brother had been killed in act of gun violence in Boston, case of mistaken identity. And she talked about how hopeless she felt after her brother was killed, and how uncertain she was about her own future and her family's future. And she talked about her mom's enthusiasm about Roxbury Prep and her skepticism as a sixth grader about coming to a new school that was different from the school where some of her friends were going. But she talked about how meaningful it was for her in her life to be in a school that provided not just rigorous academics, but a safe and supportive learning environment that invested in her and her dreams. We all should be so lucky as to get to spend time with those students who will remind us of the long-term difference that our work makes. Right, and China on this panel reminded me of some times when, she had to interact with me as her middle school principal that were not all positive. She was a middle schooler, right? But she talked about the difference that it made to have the experience of knowing that the educators who were working with her at Roxbury Prep were there for her, believed in her. And even when she was getting in trouble, or even when she was not getting the grades she wanted, it was about investing in her. We have to live out of that vision for the future, what our kids could be capable of, not just in terms of college and career success, but in changing whole communities. When the graduates of schools represented in this room are the leaders of the businesses and foundations and the mayors and city council members and county executives and governors and presidents, that's when we'll know that our work is making the difference that we intend. Right? Our aspiration has to be not just a little bit of incremental progress, not just outperforming a few schools here or there. It has to be about truly transforming our society to one that lives up to America's promise. America's promise of equality, America's promise of liberty, America's promise of democracy. And the way we do that is by creating an education system that delivers opportunity for every child. It's inspiring to be in this room because you show up every day, whether it's in schools or in whatever sector you're involved in, you show up every day with a commitment that we can do better, that we can deliver for every kid. I'm inspired by the progress Indianapolis has made, but even more inspired by the progress yet to come, the success not yet achieved, but that is in sight. Thank you for your leadership.